The Hanma family, despite its dysfunction, has several cherished traditions that have endured for generations. They are a formidable lineage of warriors who highly value both strength and technique, although Yujiro's commitment to this ideal may be questionable. Additionally, all members of the family possess extraordinary anatomical features known as demon backs, which seem to be tailored for the sole purpose of combat. This topic will be explored in more depth in a separate video. It is also noteworthy that each of the three Hanma generations has embarrassed multiple US presidents over 2 centuries, as will be discussed later in this video. However, one long-standing tradition that Baki has yet to uphold, at least according to family lore, is the ability to single-handedly take on an entire army. The burning question is, can Baki successfully confront a military behemoth like the United States of America all by himself, just like his father and grandfather before him? This intriguing possibility will be dissected in this video. During World War II, the US Army invaded Okinawa, where Yuichiro Hanma, the grandfather of Baki Hanma, was living. Hanma was a legendary martial artist, known for his incredible strength and resilience. When the US Army landed on Okinawa, Hanma met them alone. He easily defeated the first platoon of soldiers that came after him, without taking a single scratch. The US Army was shocked and confused. They had never faced an opponent like Hanma before. The US Army tried everything to defeat Hanma. They sent in more and more soldiers, but he defeated them all with ease. They even tried bombing the island, but Hanma survived unharmed. Hanma's strength and resilience were truly incredible. He could withstand the heaviest machine gun fire and even the most powerful bombs. He could also move at incredible speeds and deliver devastating punches with enough force to kill a man instantly. The US Army was desperate to defeat Hanma. They knew that if they couldn't stop him, he would single-handedly turn the tide of the war in the Pacific. Finally, the US Army decided to send a battleship to attack Hanma. They knew that a battleship was their only chance of defeating him. The battleship arrived off the coast of Okinawa and opened fire on Hanma with its massive cannons. Hanma stood his ground and deflected the shells with his bare hands. After several minutes of bombardment, the battleship was unable to damage Hanma. He was simply too strong and too fast. The captain of the battleship knew that he was facing an impossible opponent. He ordered his crew to abandon the ship. Hanma watched as the crew of the battleship jumped overboard and swam away. He then turned and walked back into the ocean, disappearing beneath the waves. Yuichiro Hanma's defeat of the US Army is one of the most legendary events in the Baki universe. It is a testament to his incredible strength, resilience, and skill as a martial artist. In the history of Japan, the iconic events of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki loom large. Interestingly, there's a curious twist to this narrative, one that traces back to a legendary figure named Yuichiro. While this might sound like an improbable tale, it's an intriguing origin story for an extraordinary family tradition in the manga world. Both Tokugawa and Doppo Orochi, prominent figures of their time, remember Yuichiro as an enigmatic urban legend. The implication here is that Yuichiro was the mastermind behind these daring acts, essentially punking out the mightiest army in the world. It's a rather badass notion to think that it was Yuichiro who orchestrated these events, even casually using his famed dress technique to handle American troops as if they were mere nunchucks, completely unfazed by their sheer size and strength. However, it's essential to note that the Battle of Okinawa, where Yuichiro's exploits supposedly unfolded, took place in 1945. It would be several decades before another Hanma would single-handedly defeat the US Army, thereby further cementing this remarkable family tradition. This Hanma, who would one-up his father's legacy, would go on to humiliate the US on multiple occasions, and even form a personal friendship pact with America. The passing of Yuichiro's formidable fighting genes to his son in their humble abode marked the birth of the man we now know as the world's strongest creature, achieving this remarkable feat at the astonishingly young age of 16. Yujiro fought on the side of the Vietnamese, and he quickly became a thorn in the side of the US military. He was able to defeat dozens of American soldiers at a time, using his incredible strength and martial arts skills. The Americans were baffled by Yujiro's fighting ability. They had never seen anyone like him before. One day, Yujiro was cornered by a large group of US soldiers. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he refused to surrender. Yujiro fought with all his might, and he was able to defeat every single one of the soldiers. This incident further cemented Yujiro's reputation as a legend. He was now known as the strongest man in the world. A few years after the Vietnam War, Yujiro attacked a Latin American drug lord who had connections with the US government. He wiped out entire divisions of Navy SEALs and Green Berets before encountering Biscuit Oliver, a legendary martial artist who was sent in as a last resort. Yujiro told Oliver that he wasn't ready to fight the world's strongest yet, and he continued his onslaught. He eventually made his way to the White House, and the President of the United States was powerless to stop him. The US government realized that they couldn't stop Yujiro Hanma without dooming the world to nuclear winter. So, the President created a personal treaty of friendship with him, which guarantees that no matter what happens in the world, America will always treat Yujiro Hanma as a friend. This is now the third US president that the Hanma family has embarrassed. Yujiro keeps embarrassing every subsequent president who has to renew the pact with him, using nothing more than his presence and reputation. We have conclusive proof that both Baki's grandfather and father could defeat the US armed forces and emerge relatively unscathed. However, Baki could do the same, but chooses not to, as his motivations for combat differ. Before we discuss the philosophies behind the conflicts between the three generations of the Hanma family and the fictionalized USA from the Bakiverse, we want to point out that Baki has already shown that he is capable of handling situations similar to those his father and grandfather faced, and even more challenging ones. In the first season of Baki Hanma, Baki followed in his father's footsteps by kidnapping the President of the United States. Rather than just the Japanese Prime Minister, George Bush was apparently traveling down the same road at the same time, on the same day as John F. Kennedy did, on the fateful day he was assassinated. But because America had learned from its mistakes, security was beefed up, surveillance was vigilant, and the response teams were at least doubled in size. If anything went wrong, the president's armed guard would be able to respond to it immediately. But Baki Hanma was not like any other assassin. He managed to swoop in and kidnap the president with such speed that he was only made visible thanks to a camera with a high frame rate. He then coaxed the president into putting him in Arizona State Prison because he wanted to fight Biscuit Oliver. Baki's kidnapping of the president was a bold and daring move, but it was also a calculated one. He knew that the only way to get Oliver to fight him was to put himself in a situation where he had no choice, and he knew that the only way to survive in prison was to be the strongest. Baki's gamble paid off. He got to fight Oliver, and he proved himself to be one of the strongest fighters in the world. He also showed that he was not afraid to take on any challenge, no matter how difficult. To clarify, Baki did not kill or severely injure his opponents like his father and grandfather did. He simply demonstrated his superior strength to them without much effort. However, the reason why they survived is because Baki's goal as a fighter is not to become the strongest fighter in the world, but rather to become just a little bit stronger than his father. He constantly emphasizes that even if his father were the weakest person in the world, he would be content with being the second weakest, because it would mean he was stronger than Yujiro. To him, his journey as a fighter is not an impossible task like his competitors think it is, because unlike them, he is not chasing strength to become the strongest. He is chasing strength to beat his dad. Yujiro Hanma and Yuichiro Hanma had different reasons for decimating American forces. Yujiro was driven by a desire to test his strength, while Yuichiro was motivated to protect his homeland. Yujiro knew from a young age that he was the strongest man in the world. His exploits against armies were nothing more than tests of his own power. He committed acts of war crimes without hesitation because he believed that he was above the law. Yuichiro, on the other hand, was deeply patriotic. He saw the American soldiers as invaders, and he was determined to repel them. He fought bravely and managed to defeat a large number of soldiers, but he was eventually overwhelmed. His legend still persists today because he is seen as a symbol of Japanese resistance. Baki Hanma is a man driven by a single goal: to surpass his father, Yujiro Hanma, the world's strongest creature. From a young age, Baki has trained tirelessly to become the best martial artist he can be. He has pushed his body to its limits and mastered a wide range of fighting techniques. Baki is incredibly strong and fast. He can easily dodge bullets, punch through concrete walls, and lift weights that would crush ordinary people. He is also a skilled strategist and tactician, able to outwit even the most formidable opponents. Despite his immense power, Baki is not a violent or aggressive person. He only fights when he has to, and he never kills his opponents unless he absolutely has to. He is also a kind and compassionate person who cares deeply about his friends and family. For these reasons, it is unlikely that Baki would ever choose to fight an entire army by himself. He is not the kind of person who would want to hurt anyone needlessly, and he would see no point in proving his strength in such a way. However, if he was forced to fight an army, he would undoubtedly be victorious. Baki's strength, speed, and skill would be more than enough to defeat any army. He could easily dodge their bullets and attacks, and he could disable or kill them with a single blow. He is also resourceful and adaptable, and he would be able to use his surroundings to his advantage. In short, Baki is capable of defeating an entire army by himself, but he is unlikely to do so. He is a kind and compassionate person who only fights when he has to. That's the end of the video, but before that, I want to ask you a question. Is Baki strong enough to defeat the army by himself? We've given our reasons in the video, but what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and have a great day.